The only way the president can be removed is by the Senate. The 25th Amendment is inapplicable here, for reasons I don't need to get into. It is the sole constitutional method for removing a president. That's what the framers said. They spent a lot of time looking at this, impeachment generally. And they weren't really looking at impeachment of judges. Impeachment of judges isn't even in the Constitution, but they are covered. They weren't talking about impeachment of a vice president. They were talking about, really, effectively, the impeachment of a president. We talked a little bit about this earlier this week, didn't we? And they debated it, and they went through great pains about what it should mean, English common law. George Mason made his recommendation. James Madison disagreed, and they came up with the language that they have now for impeachment and the trial in the Senate. In Britain, while our men were debating the Constitution in Philadelphia, they had a similar system. The charges would come out of the House of Commons, and the trial would take place in the House of Lords. So they copied that part of it from the British. The definitions they used, high crimes and misdemeanors and so forth and so on, they took the definitions in English common law, accepted some and adjusted others. They also made the point, Hamilton did, that the president shouldn't be, his existence shouldn't be at the behest of the Senate. So they wanted a mechanism to remove a president if necessary, but not to have a president threatened day in and day out with impeachment, which is what's happening today. But it's much more pernicious today because we have a prosecutor who I think believes he has the power to remove a president. And we have a Democrat Party with that belief too. I want to reiterate to you, no president has been indicted while in office. No president has been forced to appear before, in person, a federal grand jury. No president has been tried for any crimes while in office. A prosecutor and a jury cannot substitute for the United States Senate. Cannot. And it's never happened in American history. Now, as I was thinking about this, I think it was last weekend, I posted something on Facebook, or it may have been before, and we talked about it. As a matter of fact, it was before that. And I talked about it with Joe DeGeneva and Dan Bongino on Life, Liberty, and Levin. And it was this. Congress has a responsibility to step up right now and to protect the Constitution and the executive branch from Mueller, as opposed to protecting Mueller, who is the perpetrator in this case. We talked about that on this show and on Fox. And there should be hearings, and Mr. Mueller should be forced to testify about the positions of the Department of Justice in those two memorandum, about the position of the framers of the Constitution when it comes to removal, rather than running to his defense. We talked about that. Apparently somebody's written an op-ed about that now. Good for them. The day after the election. I'm not going to bore you with clips. We could do this day in and out. I'm not going to do it. I told you they were going to try and impeach this president or indict him. Because they hate him, and they've always hated him. I objected strenuously to the way that retired Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was treated, when virtually everybody else abandoned him around here. And I told you then something was terribly wrong about the way this man was treated, and I smelled a rat. Not because I'm prescient, but I've been around. I smelled a rat. That he was set up somehow, some way, but I didn't know exactly how. Now we know. Now we know. Paul Manafort. I objected to the way Manafort was being treated. I don't know the man. I don't know anything about him. But the abusive tactics by the FBI and Mueller digging into issues in 2005 and 2007, I don't need a federal judge to tell me what's going on. You and I talked about this. months and months and months ago. Wildly out of control, the prosecutor. Wildly outside his mandate. Even when it came to the House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Devin Nunes, who was being trashed and attacked by the media, by Lindsey Graham, by the Republican chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, by John McCain, by a whole bunch of people, including our own media. I said, no. Devin Nunes is a hero. For 6 months he had to sit on the sideline when a phony ethics complaint was filed. And the people in my business were wetting themselves. They wouldn't come to the man's defense. I came to his defense because I've seen this before. I've seen it before. And they tried it with me. Because he's on to something. Because he's a fighter. Because he's trying to get to the bottom of this. And we've talked about this over and over again about Mueller's abuse of power. His preposterous indictment of 13 Russian trolls. Right out of the box, we talked about this. How ridiculous this was. We've talked about his ties to Comey and Rosenstein. We've talked about his past cases. And we've talked about how Rosenstein should never have been involved in these matters. He's a witness. He wrote a memo proposing the firing of Comey. He shouldn't be anywhere near this matter, but he is. We've talked about that at great length. Read from his memo. When the leaks against Trump were coming fast and furiously, we said they have to be coming from the top ranks of the FBI. I even told you about the former deputy director of the FBI, felt that he was deep throat. He was the guy leaking a Watergate. We talked about this, and I said, well, guess what? Somebody at the top of the FBI, I don't know who, is leaking, because that is the mothership. They're the ones that know who's being investigated for what. Turns out, they're all leaking. Comey, McCabe, Strzok, Page, others. Top of the FBI. Having, again, based on my experience, I insisted that Congress needed to secure a copy of the FISA applications to determine what information was used to secure a remarkable, extraordinary warrant. First, I thought against Trump world generally, but then we later learned it was against Carter Page to go through the back door to surveil Trump world. You had to get a hold of the applications to find out what the hell was going on. Well, eventually, they got a hold of enough of it to find out what was going on. The dossier, the infamous dossier, funded by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC, smelled another rat. Something wasn't right about that FISA. Something wasn't right. And now we know what wasn't right. I've been insisting that it's not possible all of this could be taking place without the White House knowing about most of it, without Obama knowing about most of it. So much of it was already in the media. How would Obama not know about it? I contend to this day, he did and he does. All roads go to Obama. And I believe they do.